Welcome to the HR Community Podcast. My name is Shane O'Neill, founder of Civitas Talent, the HR and HSC recruitment community. Each episode, we will host HR leaders and discuss their journey and discover best practice HR solutions across the HR industry. Whether you're a CEO, HR executive, or operating across the wider HR space, this podcast is for you. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to comment and share your reviews. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Community Podcast. This morning, I'm here with Peter Kokkinos. Peter is the Vice President and Managing Director for Udemy. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Shane. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm in a very wet and damp Sydney today, but it looks like the weekend is bringing some sunshine again, but otherwise, all good. Thanks for joining us. For those that are listening, me and Peter have been speaking in the background about this over the last couple of months, so great that we could finally bring it together. But I guess for those of our listeners, Peter, that are tuning in, maybe haven't heard of yourself or Udemy, do you want to sort of give us a bit of an overview about you, about your role, about Udemy, and tell us a little bit more about all that?
Okay, yeah, sure. Look, yeah, I've spent the last 30 years of my career in the ed tech and HCM space. I've been working with what must have been thousands of organizations at this stage all over the world, helping them build, mission critical skills to reshape their business. And as someone who's really values driven, it's been sort of the perfect space for me to operate in. And today, as Vice President and Managing Director of Udemy in Asia Pacific, I lead the strategy and for the business and support over 160 Udemates, as we call them, on our mission of improving lives through learning. So, I love what I do. I love the people I do it with. I have a passion for it. And especially now as AI reshapes how we work and learn, I think that Udemy has a really important role to play in helping the world get ready for the future. And there's anxiety around the future and what's happening. So yeah, that's me a little bit, and we can dive into more detail there. But at a Udemy level, we define, and it's evolving very quickly. The whole industry, our industry is evolving really quickly, and define Udemy as an AI-powered skills acceleration platform. I think that's what we're talking about, reframing it. There's a lot of factors that differentiate that, an AI-powered skills acceleration platform, from what the traditional e-learning platforms that you may have been used to, and many of the people listening and watching would be used to engaging with. And at its core, I see it as a complete reimagination of the traditional find course, do course model that many people are used to in the e-learning industry and they've had access to today. And that platform, it's really designed to meet the learner at that moment in time, in the flow of work, personalized and customized specifically for them, as opposed to just having access to generic e-learning courses. But then take that concept and scale it across any size organization. So at a high level, that's how I define.
I can hear the passion, and I'm really keen to get in to unpack a couple of agenda and topics that we have for today. But I love the learning side as well. Particularly having been on the recruitment side of the wider human resources space for a long time. So at a distance, or maybe as an external, seeing the evolution of learning. But, even if I was to look at your background and experience specifically, Peter, like you must have seen some amazing evolution in learning and development, like not just the capability that's out there now, the technology and the demand, but also the way people are learning now and the competitiveness to keep people engaged. Have you noticed that through your journey?
Absolutely. And I'm going to age myself now, but I've been in, as I said, 30 years. That's pretty much all my career. I sometimes say it's a bit like the mafia. I've tried to get out a few times, but it sort of keeps dragging me back in, whether that's by design or by luck or whatever it might be. But, go back into the 90s. I mean, we were using laser discs. Remember those old laser discs? That's how people were deploying online learning at the time. They had a computer there, a laser disc, they had full motion video. It was awesome at the time, really expensive, but really coolly engaging with touchscreens, and then it evolved into putting floppy disks in and sort of more sort of CBT based learning, and then the internet sort of changed the way things evolved again. And I'm going to say the internet evolved, it moved a little bit, and it got better. It got a little bit more gamified. It got a little bit, full motion video, all those kinds of things started to come back. But I'm going to say that it hasn't been until AI sort of impacted it that it's really sort of changed the game. And I'm seeing a completely different view of how we can deliver learning to people today. So the journey that I've seen along the way has been one of excitement, but also frustration. It's not always been easy to get people to engage in learning, and we can talk a little bit about that and how organizations approach it. But I think it's going to get easier and better. It's more personalized and now with AI, and it's an exciting opportunity. And I tell people that come into Udemy now, as we're hiring new people, this is the best time to be in this industry. I've been toiling, done all the hard work. Now you get all the accolades and the easy stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting as well. Like, I mean, I swore on this season I wouldn't talk about the dreaded years of COVID, but it's hard not to bring it into conversation. But it's interesting how around that time, particularly with remote working being non-negotiable, the increased demand in online and e-learning, and I know it was maybe 10 years prior to that when it started to really ramp up, but then forcefully some organizations had to invest in it and learn about it. And look, here we are now, 4 or 5 years later, talking about artificial intelligence, which has been around for a long time, but the conversation has just evolved more and more and more. And organizations, that we work with and partner with as well, are really starting to adopt AI into their business operations and their HR and talent functions. Talk to us a little bit about AI, Peter, because I know it's a big part of your ecosystem at Udemy. What sort of AI skills are you seeing across different industries that are, I guess, rapidly on the rise?
AI is no longer just considered a tech skill. I think going back a couple of years, that's probably the way people viewed it. There was AI technologies that have been around longer than the majority of us probably were even aware of. But it's now embedded across sort of all functions, from marketing, finance, HR operations. It's being defined now as a workplace necessity, almost like knowing how to use a computer a few years ago. And that's really only happened in the last couple of years. And there's evidence of that in the Udemy platform. The demand for those AI skills have quadrupled since 2024.
Yeah. Wow.
So tech skills before, now the mainstream starting to see it, and it's embedding in their workflows. So up 291% from 2023, that just general AI skills. And then the sort of more generative AI stuff, 10x increase in that since 2024 to to 2025, which is just phenomenal.
Huge.
And again, I don't think it matters what tools you learn. I think what matters and what we're seeing, the trends we're seeing in our customer base is what AI tools are available to you today and in your organization, and how can those tools help you perform your role more effectively. So it's reframing it away from learning a tool to learning how you can use those tools to actually perform the tasks that you need to do. So right now, there's still fear as to how AI is going to impact our lives, I think. I think that the more people make an effort to learn how those tools can help them in the context of their own work or their own lives, and we're going to see a further uptake in that advancement, I think. And companies like us, as I said before, Udemy, we're going to play a big role in helping people understand and educate themselves to reduce that anxiety that is associated with the lack of understanding of the positive role that AI can have on our work and our lives. And it's easy to identify and think through where the negatives might be. You can watch Terminator and think, oh my God, AI is going to take over the world. That kind of, from that level to, it's going to take my job over. But I think if you reframe that from a learning perspective and really understand how it can impact you and make your life easier, we're going to see people embrace it more and use it in the right ways.
As you talk about that embracing AI, like some of the events and workshops that we've been doing with some of our leaders, you can really hear and see that in the room. Like there's some amazing businesses and HR leaders there that sort of described their journey with adopting it. And you'd probably be across all of this as well, because what we're seeing and hearing in our community is, you've got different camps. In some camps, it's like real progressive, like they're just going hell for leather on AI. You've got others who are a bit more conservative, so it's a bit like the second mouse gets the cheese analogy. They're kind of waiting to see who does what and go from there. And then you've got like a bit of fearful anxiety within organizations where they've banned a number of tools, including ChatGPT and the likes from their organizations. But I guess the reason why I bring that up is learning is obviously a big part of an organization's, identity and culture. Talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us a little bit about building a culture of continuous learning. I guess when you talk about that whole AI educational ecosystem.
All the things you said are absolutely right. We're seeing so much of that. The different companies I get to talk to, the different industries and how they're embracing AI. With the banks, incredibly conscious of security, so they limiting and restricting the tools available. Professional services companies are going all out because it's transforming the way they can do business. And then different companies at different levels have got different views on it. So yeah, I agree with what you talked about there. But from a continuous sort of learning culture perspective, firstly, I'm not sure on my journey that I've seen too many organizations that have done it across the whole organization. I think it's easier to do in pockets with the technology and the learning we've had available to us over that journey. That was my goal, is to foster a culture of continuous learning. Three things that I'd focus on. The first one is intent at a leadership level, right? So let me give you an example of what that means. Learning isn't an expense. It should be a business imperative. And I think everyone listening to this podcast is going to agree. But the reality when you're in a business doesn't always align. I read financial reports, I listen to leaders talk about learning being their number one priority and skills being important for their business. But the reality is when you go to then approach them about making those investments, we've all heard, learning is the first budget to be cut.
Yeah.
A lot of times when things get tough, when priorities come up. So if I'm in trying to build that, I would be holding my leaders accountable to what they're saying. If they're saying that learning is important, get them to prove that to you. Show you where are they talking the talk or are they walking the walk? So if learning is important, and we know that people leave organizations, in the top one or two reasons why is because they don't have development opportunities. So there's attrition, there's skills gaps, there's so many reasons why leaders say they want to invest. But the reality on the ground is different. So that's where I would focus in getting alignment there. The next one is personalization, and this is something that's sort of evolving over time. The day of dumping courses in front of an employee at an LMS and saying, "Here you go, have at it," and expecting them to have the time or the relevant content that they need to do that's over.
Yeah.
That's why we're seeing declining engagement in traditional e-learning platforms because of that reason. And what people want today is assess me and recognize the skills that I have today. So firstly, I've come here with a bunch of skills. I know a bunch of stuff already. So don't put me into a generic course where I'm relearning stuff that I already know, and that's how you get disengagement. Then understand the journey that I'm on that I want to take. So it could be I want to move from one role to another. These are the skills that I have. These are the skills that role needs. Understand that journey that I need to be on. So assess me, understand the skills that I need to develop to go on that journey, and then build a learning journey that is specific to the outcomes that I'm looking to achieve. Not, we've got a bunch of competencies. These are the competencies for one role. These are the competencies for the other. It's your job to go and work out how to do it. Technology, AI, we can do that today with our tools as well, with AI tools, can build a personalized journey. If you can't do that, you're going to lose a lot of learners along the way, and that won't allow you to build that culture. Then the last one is leveraging what new technologies, and we've got a product at Udemy called, a solution called MCP, or MCP technology, which basically allows us to embed our technology in the flow of work. So meet the learners where they are. So the idea that you can, that you would working away, you need to learn something, you'll go out to another system, go and do it and come back. That's where disengagement happens a lot of the time. So an MCP, for instance, basically, if you're in any AI tool, you should be able to call up learning inside that tool. I want to learn this. I need to understand how to perform this task. I need to develop this skill. Type it into your AI tool. It brings it directly to you in the flow of work. So that's already available, and I've got customers using that today. The next piece to that will be, and again, this is something that we should all be exploring, the ability for AI to recognize what you're doing, watching you as you work. Let's say you're coding and it's seeing you make the same mistake. It should recognize that and then say, hey, jump onto this course, do a little bit of here, have a look at this video, practice in this environment, and fix it. That's really where we want to get to. So it's not learning, it's just the flow of work. It's because we learn on data in our, most of the learning we do is day-to-day stuff. So meet them there with the new technologies available is your best chance of getting to that.
Love that. Yeah. And it's a bit like the old saying I remember back in the day, started by my career. It's, quote unquote, learn on the job, essentially, but like a modern day AI influenced approach to that, where you're
Exactly.
leveraging the
Yeah.
technology. There's
Yeah.
been like some conversations as well in our community, I guess, around, obviously we're talking a lot about learning here, and we're bringing AI into that conversation. Do you see AI maybe used or leveraged in the wrong ways, a bit of a risk as well when it comes to learning? Because I think what you're talking about is definitely how I would describe best practice. You're learning on the job, you're leveraging AI, you're using the tools. Hey, have you thought about this? You're continuously upskilling. But then you're going to have a percentage of people and that are just going to take and they're just going to purely copy and paste Gen AI, put it into stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
I was at a conference recently, and they did a study on that where they asked someone to go into AI, and I can't remember the question it asked, but you had to go and it asked a particular question. They went into AI, they basically copied it and pasted it and got it on. Then they asked someone to sort of do that and then rearrange it in their own words, and then they asked someone to go and use critical thinking to type what they thought about that particular topic. And the drop off in recollection from the people that just cut it and pasted versus the people
Yeah,
that actually
wow.
at it was stark. 80% difference in the way that they could recall that, even moments later, let alone weeks or days later. So, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to be found out eventually. I mean,
Yeah,
you're not learning that way. You're just cutting, pasting stuff. Anyway,
100%.
I think it comes down to the importance of because we can focus on the technology, but what we should also be focusing on is the soft skills and leadership skills. I think that's incredibly important. We're seeing AI reshaping jobs, reshaping whole industries,
Mm,
focusing on technology. I don't think is the way to go, but
yeah.
the human skills like leadership skills, communication,
Mm,
emotional intelligence, critical thinking. If you don't have the ability, if you don't have those skills, you're going to get found out because AI is just a tool. It's about what you put in it. It's about how you use it as a tool rather than just asking it a question and getting an answer, right?
I
So,
love that.
and we're seeing that. We're seeing an uptick in those types of skills, in problem skills, in team building, in business communications, alongside the uptick in the AI technology too, which is a good sign. I think people are realizing that, hey, knowing this tool versus knowing how to use it in context is a very, very different thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier with that whole analogy, when you talk about the Terminator and is AI going to replace my role or is it going to enable it? And I think when you talk about the critical thinking, the soft skills, I agree with you. I feel like those are the elements and the skills that we need to continue to upskill in and develop in while leveraging, I guess, the capability of technology and AI and stuff like that. I mean, for particularly our leadership community, talk to us a little bit about the mindsets around that, like the importance of leadership mindsets and the importance of soft skills. I know you touched on it there, but like tell us a little bit more about that.
I'm going to make a confession here in the industry, and I've been in part of it for a long time. We've struggled as an industry to get people to engage soft skills, business
Mm,
skills, leadership skills in the e-learning environment. It's been difficult, and the reason that is because it's really generic. I'll give you an example. If you want to have a difficult having a difficult conversation with somebody, doing a course on understanding difficult conversations or learning how to do that, you can get some skills from that. But it's not in the context. Every conversation is different.
Yeah.
Every conversation is different. So we've been found out in that area. I think what's changing is let's remove the idea of generic learning from that skills and allow people to be put in an environment where they can hone the skills that they've already got. Everyone's got some skills in those areas. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say you are going to have a conversation, a difficult conversation, and you're a leader.
Yep.
You're about to do an appraisal interview with an employee that you know is going to be contentious in some way. And we've all as leaders had to deal with that. Doing a generic course on that is not going to help you. But using an AI role play, and we have access to an AI role play, imagine being able to say, okay, I'm about to go into an appraisal interview with this person. I know that these are the things that they've achieved and done in their work today. Here are some of the areas that I know are going to be contentious for this individual. Build me a role play that allows me to get to these outcomes, and you can define what outcomes in that scenario, and let me practice that in that environment. Make it hard, make it easy, make it whatever, make it contentious, and you can ask it to be contentious if you like. And the ability to be able to practice that and work through that process and then walk into that appraisal interview, having already experienced it, that's where I think we're going to go with leadership skills. It's going to be learning in the context of the moment, learning in the context of my knowledge, learning in the context of my business, as opposed to generic e-learning courses. So that can be done today, and we're encouraging customers, and we're seeing a huge uplift of that. But that's where I think we need to be. I'm not going to go doing a generic e-learning course, and I'd rather go down that path. My personal view, I'd rather do it that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think for our HR talent and work health safety leadership community, or the wider audience that are listening, I think it's a great way to adopt AI and leverage it. And dare I say, and maybe I'm biased to the HR industry, but dare I say there's a lot of professionals in our space leveraging and adopting it, which I think is really good. But I think, there's definitely an opportunity for other leaders across a multitude of businesses and business units, whether you're a small SME family run business with a handful of staff right through to a senior enterprise. I think everyone can really start to adopt and get involved, which is interesting because I look at HR teams, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, Peter. And like at some of our events that we've been doing, I've definitely seen the sophistication of the conversation around AI as well. Looking at HR teams, what are your thoughts on that whole movement from AI awareness through to AI fluency, and again, going back to your example, the adoption? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Again, I think people can consider AI awareness or AI fluency as learning the AI tools, and I'm giving this from the context of what I'm seeing as best practice in customers, not necessarily my view of it. But the first thing I'd say is don't look at AI fluency as learning how to use an AI tool. That's not AI fluency. There are so many tools that are embedded, and there'll be so many more. And AI will be embedded in everything that we do. If it isn't already, it's in our phones, it's everywhere already. So what I would be thinking about is it's really coming back down to the softer skills, the business skills. But ask yourself, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What workflows are you trying to improve? What impact are you trying to have? And then understanding what AI tools are available or at your disposal, and educate yourself on how these tools can help you serve the people that that you're responsible for today. Look at it through that lens. So AI fluency is about embedding it in your thinking rather than embedding it in your knowledge of that particular tool. So doing a bunch of generic learning on how will help you know how to use an AI tool, but it won't help you understand how to apply it in a way that could transform your business. So it's a mindset more than anything else. And AI is going to get smarter. You won't even see it down the track. You won't have to prompt it. It'll prompt you, right? So again, comes back to how you're thinking, the work that you're doing. That's really where we're going with it. So I'm fascinated to see, but from an HR perspective, there's so many possibilities. I'm no expert in that area, but at a high level, that's what I'm seeing best practice.
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's why as it continues to evolve, particularly, the conversation that we're having in our community, it's super cool and exciting to hear what some HR practitioners and leaders have the capability to drive forward now. It's almost like, indirectly we've sort of got our seat at the table, and now we're actually owning this sort of piece as well, because there's nothing more important to an organization than its people, than its culture, than its performance. Speaking of which, we talked a little bit about at the start of the conversation, how learning in an organization, in my world as well, it's like a big USP for a company's brand. Like their whole EVP, employer brand, is built around, you come here, you can learn, you can develop. Some organizations do it better than others, and like you say, when the market flips or times get tough, unfortunately it's often the first budget to get cut. But speaking of that, and ROI, it might be a hard question to answer, but talk to me a little bit about measurement. So how do we measure the impact of upskilling beyond just participation, and what good looks like?
It's the one challenge that in our industry we face, and we get asked all the time. Help me, help me understand the impact this is having. And I think the majority of people that are on this, listening to this right now, would know the things I'm about to say. They would understand them. The challenge they've got is it's the business that are asking them to, show me ROI. So a lot of times the traditional metrics is course completion. That doesn't really reflect ROI, does it? How many, if you look at financial reports, a lot of them say we've set a target to put all of employees through 20 hours of learning a year. 20 hours learning for what? What deal? They could be learning basket weaving. It's not relevant to their role. So I think first and foremost, if you're going to measure learning appropriately, you've got to set the agenda for why you're learning. Why are we upskilling people? What's the end result we're looking for? Well, we're looking to increase productivity. We're looking to create career mobility. We're looking to reduce, attrition. Get the organization on the same page, agreeing that these are the metrics that we're looking to impact, and move them away from how much money did I spend on learning and how much people engaged learning. What did people do with the learning when they got it is really the question. So the areas that we focus on and we ask our customers to think about: skills confidence. Are employees using the new skills in real world situations? That's easier to measure, and it's easier now with that role play tool that I talked about. Is saying, okay, we put you through this. Now we're going to put you through a role play to show me that there was a material change in the way that you approached that task before and then there afterwards. So there are ways to track that. Behavioral change is another way. Again, those types of tools that I talked about are leaders seeing improvements in decision-making and collaboration. It doesn't have to go back to 100 hours of learning and therefore being measured on that. Are your leaders seeing an improvement in that group after they came out of a learning, or after they interacted with your learning solutions that you're made available to them? And the last one is, I think about, especially if it's AI and AI fluency, because everyone's embarking on that journey now. What are we looking for? We're looking for people to engage AI in a more effective way and engage it itself. Some people aren't even using it. But your tech teams can tell you, was there an uptick? Are more people using those tools now that they were using before? Those AI tools have metrics. They can see what people are asking. They can see, there's so much more there. So go to them and ask them, hey, I just put people through some fluency. Are we seeing an uptick in usage? Are we seeing more effectiveness in those areas? Because ultimately, again, your leadership will know that if they can use those tools effectively, they're going to be more effective. They're going to increase productivity, increase innovation. That'll make the difference. So that's where I'd focus.
That's really cool. And crystal ball time, you've got your crystal ball, Peter. You've obviously been through some fairly cool and interesting evolutions in learning and development over your 20, 30 years in the space. What's next for learning? What do you see coming up for learning, upskilling globally? Well, crystal ball time, what are you sort of thinking?
I touch on some of the stuff, but learning will move away from that traditional, the way that we've seen it, into the work. So it won't be seen as a learning event. It'll just be seen, I think, as part of what, learning at work. Like we most of the learning that we talked about is done on the job, right? So learning will move away more from traditional learning to that. I think that's the first piece in the flow of work. AI fluency will become foundational. I think that's really, really important. That's the other area that embrace that. That is coming regardless of whether you like it or not. It is going to be a fact. So, we need to focus on how we can teach people to leverage that AI technology appropriately for their new roles. Personalization in learning is going to be key. Before that, there is no way of personalizing learning for an individual. It was all done at a high level and really generic. So people are going to expect absolute personalization for themselves, very relevant to the moment in time, my job, my role, my goals, my aspirations. If it doesn't align to that, they're not going to consider it. And I think soft skills will gain even more value. I think if we're not focusing there, these are all the themes that we touched on, Shane, along the way. Short term to mid term, these are the things that you'll see. Longer term, I probably don't have the imagination for it because, I get surprised every day when our product development guys come and say, "Oh, we're doing this and we're doing that." I'm like, how, what, when?
Yeah.
So, that's what's happening. So I keep an eye out, more and more coming. Maybe we'll do this again in another year.
100%. Yeah.
I'll have more stuff to talk to you about.
Absolutely. And then just, I guess, selfishly focusing on some of those predictions for our listeners in particular, how do you feel, or what sort of advice would you give some of our HR and people culture and talent community to future-proof their functions, future-proof their role and position within all that?
Again, ask yourself, ask your learners, what's the ideal scenario for them? If you want them to develop themselves, give them the best opportunity to do that. Don't limit yourself. Oh, we've made this investment. We've got this. We're going to make the most of this. This is the time to change. This is the time to evolve. Get out there and speak to different organizations about how they can help make it more personal, make it more effective. Challenge our industry to bring more technology, to bring more personalization, more learning in the flow of work. It's time to change. It's time to demand it. I'm still seeing organizations and L&D professionals and HR professionals worried about going back to the business and asking for more money to make that happen. I think now is the time to evolve.
Obviously, that whole journey, I think is super, super fascinating, Peter. And thank you for your time and for all our listeners tuning in. I hope you don't mind me asking you, or maybe put it out there, but and our audience can obviously reach out to us as they do. But for those that are curious, they're sitting there, they're listening, and they're going, "Hey, I'm only scratching the surface here with AI." Peter's preaching some truth here. What can our listeners do? Can they connect with you? Can they reach out to you? Can they reach out to the Udemy team? Yeah,
they can. Yeah, we can go on our website. There's opportunities there to be able to connect with people. Jump on that, and people will give you a call. So there's no obligation just to have a conversation with someone about, hey, here's where I am. This is what I'm looking to do. I heard Peter on this podcast. I'd like to explore more. So you can go through our website to do that. I'm happy to share my details. You can come to me if you want to talk about it, and happy to come in and share what our other customers are doing, what best practice looks like. So yeah, please come to us at Udemy. I think we're uniquely positioned at the moment compared to maybe some other areas of the industry that are sort of lagging behind a bit. So I know I can take a biased view to that, but I promise you the end result is trying to help our customers and deliver learning be better and move the needle. So if we can't do that, then it'll prove to be the case. But I'm really confident that, if you come to us, we can at least point you in the right direction.
Again, another reason why I bring it up is, I find as well, being involved in the wider HR community, there are certain individuals that, proactively, progressively go and learn. There's leaders that go, hey, you go and you learn and you get whatever courses you need and you can start applying them in the role. There's other leaders and another camp where they go, this is what we need you to learn and this is how we need you to learn it. And then there's the camp that's like, we don't do it, we don't care. But my point being, doesn't matter which camp you sit in as an individual. I think now is the time to selfishly, I guess, put yourself out there a bit and do upskill, particularly in some of those areas that you mentioned, because I think it's so important. But yeah, to take it to the next level, if you can get your organization involved and drive that across the organization, it'll leave a a legacy. So I really appreciate your time, Peter. It was good to flesh it all out. I will take you up on your offer to jump on here again for a part two in another year or two, maybe three. I think the way things are evolving so quickly, it might be 12 months' time when we see another huge change. But thank you again, and thank you to our listeners.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you for tuning in to the HR Community Podcast. Remember to like and subscribe and share your views and comments below. This podcast was brought to you by Civitas Talent, the HR and HSC recruitment community. Whether you're a candidate looking for a new role or organization looking to secure brand new talent for your team, please get in touch with us today. Thank you.